A significant diplomatic engagement unfolded recently in West Africa as Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko embarked on an official visit to Burkina Faso. This trip, marked by a notably warm reception from Burkina Faso's transitional president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, underscores a deliberate and growing effort by Senegal to reinforce diplomatic ties and security cooperation with a key member of the Alliance of Sahel States, or AES. According to reporting from the Senegalese press agency, APS Prime Minister Sonko arrived in the Burkinabe capital, Ouagadougou, accompanied by a high-level delegation. The presence of senior officials, including Senegal's Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Defense, highlighted the strategic importance Dakar placed on this visit. The official itinerary included crucial discussions. Prime Minister Sonko held initial talks with his Burkinabe counterpart, Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo, before proceeding to a pivotal meeting with President Traoré at the Presidential Palace. APS characterized the purpose of the trip as providing political and moral support to Burkina Faso's transitional government. This framing is particularly noteworthy given the political context in Burkina Faso. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has been leading a transitional administration since seizing power in a military coup in September 2022. His government faces immense challenges, most critically an escalating insurgency by various armed groups. These groups include formidable entities such as Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin, or JNIM, a coalition of militants with strong ties to Al-Qaeda, operating extensively across the volatile Sahel region. The scale of the violence orchestrated by these groups is devastating, resulting in significant loss of life, widespread displacement of populations, and the erosion of state control across large swathes of the country. The shared threat posed by these jihadist insurgencies is a major driver for the need for enhanced security collaboration between Senegal and Burkina Faso, despite their differing political paths. Beyond the pressing issue of regional security, the meeting between the two leaders is also being interpreted within the context of broader regional tensions. It is seen in part as a response to what the Burkinabe junta has frequently described as attempts at external destabilisation. While specific actors are not always named publicly in joint statements, the Burkinabe authorities have notably and repeatedly pointed fingers at neighboring Côte d'Ivoire regarding alleged interference. The complex relationships between Sahelian nations and their coastal neighbors are often fraught with historical complexities, economic rivalries, and cross-border issues, making accusations of external meddling a recurring theme in the regional political discourse. This visit marks a significant step in Prime Minister Sonko's diplomatic engagement with the region, following his earlier trip to Mali in August 2024. Like Burkina Faso, Mali is also under military rule and a founding member of the Alliance of Sahel States. The AES bloc, which currently comprises Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, was established as a strategic alliance in response to mounting tensions with the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS. Senegal, unlike its AES neighbors, remains a full member of ECOWAS. The formation of the AES can be traced to the aftermath of the coups in its member states and the subsequent reactions from ECOWAS, which included imposing sanctions and diplomatic pressure. The military governments in Bamako, Ouagadougou and Niamey felt that ECOWAS, traditionally focused on democratic norms and regional integration, was not sufficiently supportive of their struggles against internal security threats and was unduly influenced by external powers. The AES was thus conceived as a counterweight, focused on mutual defense and asserting the sovereignty of its members. Prime Minister Sonko's visits to both Mali and Burkina Faso signal a nuanced and arguably pragmatic approach by Dakar to regional diplomacy. While maintaining its commitment to ECOWAS, Senegal, under the new leadership of President Bassirou Diomaye Faye and Prime Minister Sonko, appears committed to maintaining open dialogue and fostering cooperation with the AES states. This approach acknowledges the shared regional challenges, particularly concerning security, and suggests a willingness to engage with all neighbors, regardless of their internal political structures or their standing within traditional regional The election of Bassirou Diomaye Faye and the appointment of Ousmane Sonko earlier this year represented a significant political shift in Senegal. The new administration's platform emphasized sovereignty, pan-Africanism, and a re-evaluation of Senegal's foreign policy, aiming for greater independence and a focus on regional solidarity. Sonko's engagements with AES members can be viewed as a practical manifestation of this new foreign policy orientation. By engaging directly with the leadership in Bamako and Ouagadougou, Dakar may be attempting to position itself as a potential bridge between the increasingly estranged ECOWAS and AES blocs. This strategy could involve facilitating communication, exploring avenues for joint action against terrorism, and promoting stability in the region, even as the formal relationship between ECOWAS and the AES countries remains strained. This approach requires a delicate balancing act for Senegal, preserving its standing within ECOWAS and among its traditional international partners, while demonstrating solidarity with its Sahelian neighbors facing critical security and developmental challenges. Burkina Faso under Captain Traoré presents a complex picture. His government came to power promising to prioritize the fight against terrorism and restore security, issues that had deeply frustrated the population under the previous regime. Traoré, a relatively young military officer, quickly gained popular support through his forceful rhetoric and promises to stand firm against both jihadists and perceived foreign interference. His administration has taken steps such as expelling French military forces and strengthening ties with new international partners, notably Russia, which has been seen as offering security assistance without the political conditionalities often associated with Western partners. Despite a degree of popular backing, Traoré's government faces immense and overlapping crises. The humanitarian situation is dire, with millions displaced internally and reliant on aid. Large areas of the country remain insecure, hindering economic activity and basic governance. The timeline and process for returning to civilian constitutional rule remain subjects of domestic and international debate. For Captain Traoré, receiving the Prime Minister of Senegal, a prominent and respected country in the region and a stable democracy within ECOWAS, represents a significant diplomatic gain. It helps counter narratives of isolation often directed at the AES countries and provides an opportunity to directly discuss his government's priorities and challenges with a key neighbor. The security landscape across the Sahel remains the most urgent and shared concern. The insurgency, driven by groups like JNIM and ISIS-GS, thrives on state weakness, poverty, and intercommunal tensions. These groups have proven adaptable and resilient, capable of launching sophisticated attacks and controlling territory. The conflict has had a devastating impact not just on the immediate victims of violence, but on the wider population through displacement, food insecurity, and the disruption of essential services. Both Senegal and Burkina Faso share a vested interest in seeing this conflict contained and ultimately resolved, as instability in one country inevitably impacts its neighbors through refugee flows, cross-border movement of militants, and regional economic disruption. The security cooperation component of the visit is thus particularly critical. Discussions likely focused on intelligence sharing, coordinating border security measures, and potentially exploring joint operations or training initiatives. While Senegal has largely been spared the widespread daily violence seen in the central Sahelian countries, it faces the risk of spillover and the potential for radicalized elements to operate within its borders. Supporting Burkina Faso in its fight against terrorism is therefore also a matter of Senegal's own national security interest. The accusations by the Burkinabe junta against Côte d'Ivoire add another layer of complexity to the regional dynamic. Relations between Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire have historically been close, tied by extensive migration, trade, and ethnic links. However, political tensions have flared since the coups in Burkina Faso. The Burkinabe authorities have accused Abidjan of harboring coup plotters or supporting elements seeking to destabilize the transitional government. Côte d'Ivoire has denied these allegations, emphasizing its commitment to regional stability and non-interference. These accusations, whether substantiated or not, highlight the deep mistrust that exists between some AES members and certain ECOWAS countries, further complicating regional cooperation efforts. Prime Minister Sonko's visit to Ouagadougou could be seen as an attempt by Senegal to navigate these tricky waters. By engaging with Burkina Faso, Dakar is not necessarily validating the accusations against Côte d'Ivoire or taking sides in the ECOWAS-AES divide. Instead, it appears to be prioritizing direct engagement on issues of mutual concern, primarily security, while acknowledging the political realities on the ground. This pragmatic approach recognizes that effective responses to regional threats require communication and coordination, even among countries with differing political systems or regional affiliations. The visit also sends a political message within the region. For the AES countries, it is a sign that not all ECOWAS members are aligned in their approach to the military governments. It could potentially weaken the united front that ECOWAS has sought to present and provide a degree of regional validation to the AES bloc. For ECOWAS, Senegal's actions represent a departure from the more confrontational stance advocated by some members, raising questions about the bloc's internal cohesion and its strategy for dealing with the member states under military rule. Looking ahead, the outcomes of this visit will be measured not just in official communiques, but in tangible steps towards enhanced security cooperation and continued dialogue. Can this engagement lead to more effective joint efforts against jihadist groups? Can Senegal's unique position facilitate a reduction in tensions between the AES and ECOWAS? These are complex questions with no easy answers. The challenges facing the Sahel are immense: a relentless insurgency, humanitarian crises, deep-seated poverty, and the effects of climate change. Addressing these requires a concerted, coordinated effort from all regional actors. Senegal's decision to engage directly with Burkina Faso, despite the political differences and regional tensions, suggests a recognition in Dakar that pragmatic diplomacy and direct communication are essential tools in navigating the current complex landscape of West Africa. The path forward for regional cooperation remains uncertain. The divisions between ECOWAS and the AES are significant, and the underlying political issues are deeply entrenched. However, visits like Prime Minister Sonko's to Ouagadougou offer a glimmer of hope that channels of communication can remain open and that shared threats like terrorism can still serve as a basis for cooperation, even in a region undergoing rapid and unpredictable change. The effectiveness of this approach will become clearer in the coming months as the security situation evolves and the regional political dynamics continue to shift. Senegal's nuanced stance will require careful management to yield positive results for both bilateral relations and broader regional stability. The focus now turns to how the commitments made during the visit will translate into concrete actions on the ground, particularly in the crucial fight against the extremist groups destabilizing the Sahel. The effectiveness of this approach will become clearer in the coming months as the security situation evolves and the regional political dynamics continue to shift. Senegal's nuanced stance will require careful management to yield positive results for both bilateral relations and broader regional stability. The focus now turns to how the commitments made during the visit will translate into concrete actions on the ground, particularly in the crucial fight against the extremist groups destabilizing the Sahel. Thank you for listening to this episode of West Africa Currents. We hope this deep dive has provided you with valuable insight into the complex dynamics shaping the region. If you found this analysis informative, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your subscription helps us continue to bring you in-depth reporting and analysis on the critical issues facing West Africa. Hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode.